Another week, another New York Giants football game. This one probably being a trap game, qualifying as one. Welcome back to the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast, everybody. Be sure to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts as well, that being for Twin Bill and Big Blue in the Bronx. So, we play the Detroit Lions Sunday, 1 o'clock p.m., before our Thanksgiving Day game in Dallas. Now, I have to decide, of course, when I am doing the preview pod for the Dallas game. That's probably going to come out maybe Wednesday, because obviously on here Tuesdays are Tuesdays are the recap pods. So Wednesday probably is the preview pod for Dallas, obviously off Thanksgiving Day. Friday or Saturday, more leaning towards the usual Saturday for the recap of the Dallas game, and then probably wait a few days, more like a week, and then we preview the Washington game, which I will be attending along with the Colts game. So if anyone is interested in meeting myself, I'll be at the Colts game with Donald of the Boys in the Big Apple podcast, and then the classic Boys in the Big Apple crew of me, Sean, and Luca will be attending the Commanders game. I'm trying to get a custom jersey before then, but I'm getting less confident by the day because it says on the website, oh, well, we have XL, or I think it was I'm pretty sure it was XL. I'm like, hey, I'll fit into it. But, now it says out of stock. So I'm like, do I really buy a youth jersey or do I just, wait? And I'm going to wait because, buying a youth jersey of largest size, I'm small. I'm 5'7", 130 some odd pounds. But at the same time, I want something that I'll have for a while and not just grow out of. That would be a waste of $200 right there. So probably going to wait for that. We're also attending the Knicks game after the Washington game. Hopefully it doesn't get flexed or go into overtime because I know my two companions will kill me. They will kill me knowing that they won't be seeing their favorite team for a little bit. But let's talk about first thoughts. We do have an interview this week. It is with Jeremy Reisman. He did an excellent job talking about the Detroit Lions. He did write a article with a pretty funny name to it, talking about how the Giants, quote-unquote, run cowardly football. And I know a lot of Giant fans went after the article name and said it was bullshit and all these other things. I'm just going to say, hey, listen, we'll see what happens this game. The Giants could change their tempo to more of a passing offense. We'll see. But all the same usual stuff, injury report, all these different things. The feeling coming into this week is a trap game. It is a trap game. The Detroit Lions play some competitive football. Defensively, they're not very good. Their run defense has been, okay over the last few weeks, as Jeremy touches on in the interview. The passing defense, it's not great. I think despite Okudah playing very well over the last few weeks, well, guess what? At the end of the day, there are still some pieces back there that you're not necessarily confident in if you're a Lions fan. But also, when you look at the Giants receiving core, other than Darius Slayton, there's not too many great pieces. Not too many solid pieces you get to throw to. Wan'Dale Robinson looks like he's going to play this week. Obviously, with this coaching staff, they really never give it away because I'll talk about the Lemieux thing in a minute. But earlier this season, they listed Leonard Williams as questionable. He didn't play against the Packers. So, you really have to wait until game day to find out who's active, who's inactive, this, that, and the other thing. I kind of find it a little surprising that Josh Azudu may not play. It's looking like it because, he, as in Brian Dable, was very confident, at least somewhat confident in him playing. But then Art Stapleton comes out and says, well, Shane Lemieux is going to get activated and he is going to start left guard, which I'm not going to lie to you, I am very excited about. Now, nothing against Josh Azudu, he'll probably be on the bench for this game. They may even make him active and just say, look, you got to sit this one out for your injury reasons. We'll take you and put you in the lineup if, something happens. But I really don't think they would do that because Nick Gates is there. He could play left guard. Jack Anderson could play left guard. There's a couple other guys that could play left guard. So, depth is not really an issue at this moment with the New York Giants. But we'll see. Obviously, when we get later into the show, we'll talk about whether the Giants should go with more of a passing game. What will they do? Because obviously you guys were watching the show on Tuesday, and I was like, a little left to be desired by not passing the football and Daniel Jones having a really good day. Probably his most efficient day of the season, other than maybe Green Bay or even Jacksonville. But yeah, so let's go to the injury report. Detroit Lions, Charles Harris is out with a groin injury. Joshua Paschal, knee injury, he is out. He is the second-round pick out of Kentucky, I believe. Deshaun Elliott is questionable with the concussion. Many are not necessarily confident that he will play. So Will Harris, who's more of a nickel corner, they'll probably test some other guys as I can't even talk today. No, they'll probably test some other guys out. With that being said, Frank Ragnow is dealing with a foot injury. He did not practice Wednesday and Thursday, but Friday he did, so he's probably going to play. But Dexter Lawrence, take advantage of that hampering injury Frank Ragnow is dealing with. Josh Reynolds is questionable with a back injury, and Malcolm Rodriguez, elbow injury, he's also questionable. Taylor Decker, he'll play. Chase Lucas, he'll play. Fidumelo Fonwu, he'll play. DeAndre Swift, Matt Nelson, and Jamal Williams all goes the same as well. For the New York Giants, Daniel Bellinger is out with an eye injury. Obviously, we know the eye injury. I don't think he'll play against Dallas, though he started doing some minor work in practice. He's still categorized as DNP, but apparently the double vision is gone, which is something we like to hear. The obstacle is the fact that there's maybe 1-2 days of practice before they head off to Dallas for Thanksgiving, so you might need to push it back to the Washington game, something they may do with Azeez Ojulari as well, because that was the original game plan in the time span. Yeah, we're going to, put Azeez on IR, hopefully comes back for Dallas, but obviously the short practice, 1-2 days of practice, unless they fit in some practice on Wednesday, which is very, very rare, he'll probably wait till the Washington game as well, which he's got success against Washington, but that's a whole different story. We're talking about this game first. Dexter Lawrence, he's going to play. Kayvon Tibbs, he's going to play. Dane Belton, he's going to play, probably clavicle injury. They can't afford another safety to go down, but they have Terrell Burgess probably as a practice squad player lining up just in case. He'll play. Kenny Galladay will play hamstring injury. Evan Neal, doubtful. He's probably not going to play. He'll probably play in Dallas. I have confidence in that. Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm leaning towards saying with confidence that he will play. Jihad Ward, he's going to play. He had a thumb injury earlier in the week. And then Josh Azudu, it looks like he's not going to play. But, hey, listen, they may do some gamesmanship and go out there and say, hey, listen, Josh Azudu's going to play. So, either way, I bet you Detroit is probably going to go out there and say, they're probably prepping for both left guards. But then again, it was a little late to find out that, okay, Shane Lemieux is probably coming back this week. So, I'm going to look at the roster real quick, see who they could possibly activate. Obviously, they signed Mondo to the active roster, which is good. They may go with Vernon Butler again. They could go Landon Collins, but the way they did with the safeties last week, they also may place him too high with the way Jared Goff vertically attacks defenses. Maybe add another wide receiver if Wan'Dale is out, but at the same time, is Khalil Pimpleton really going to be that guy? Mekhi Polk. So it's going to be interesting if they use any of the guys. I think Lawrence Cager is definitely somebody they activate. Maybe even Andre Miller. But we haven't heard too much from him. Lawrence Cager probably is going to be utilized possibly heavily. Their linebacking core is underrated when it comes to the running game. But in the passing game, they're not good in coverage. So best bet that they have safeties maybe cover Cager as well. But Cager is a converted wide receiver, so he cannot block. He can catch the ball, though. Let's go into the stats and analytics. The Lions are 6th in total yards per game on offense, 8th in passing offense, 11th in rushing offense, and 9th in points per game. The defensive side of the ball, very grim, very opposite look. 32nd in total yards per game, 27th against the pass, 31st against the run, 32nd in points per game. Moving over to the analytics, 21st in pass percentage, 12th in run percentage, 14th in pass percentage on first down, and 22nd in run percentage on first down. And then you move to the defense, 11th in blitz percentage. So Aaron Glenn likes to blitz, but they don't get home a lot. 24th in pressure percentage and 28th in sacks. You take a look at the New York Giants, 23rd in total yards per game, 29th in passing offense, 3rd in rushing offense, and 22nd in points per game. The defensive side of the football, 18th in both total yards per game and passing defense, 24th against the run. They've been better, especially coming off last week. They were also very good against the Seahawks. And then points per game, they're 8th. Offensive analytics stats, 29th in pass percentage, 4th in run percentage, 31st in pass percentage on first down, 3rd in run percentage on first down. Before we get to the defensive analytics, I must say I would like some sort of a switch towards the end of the season. Obviously, I've stuck by the thing the last 2 years that you have success in the NFL. I mean, you can have it both ways, running or passing, but you look at the top of the league, it's passing offense that does it. And the way Mike Kafka is, in terms of his roots, the way Brian Dable is in terms of his roots, I mean, they're obviously, sticking to what works right now. But I just don't think this function of running it 30 times a game is going to be totally sustainable. I think I need to see, at least me, maybe others will disagree, I want to start seeing slowly, very slowly, that you start shifting towards more passing, pass percentage, passing on first down, because passing on first down honestly puts you in better position. That way you have some short yardage runs in there. First in blitz percentage, 12th in pressure percentage, 18th in sacks. Just something to add real quick before we go to things to look for. I'm going to really pull it up right now. Obviously, we called the game on Dead Red. Thursday was the Titans and the Packers. Derrick Henry is the leading rusher in the NFL. He's got over 1,000 yards, which I didn't think he would have. So Saquon Barkley, I'm not putting total pressure on you, but hey, listen, if you could take over Henry's spot as the king of rushing, hey, listen, would be happy to see that. Things to look for, high scoring. It's dependent on the offensive emphasis, in my opinion, and talk about the passing emphasis from Big Blue. I've talked about that really in the last 2 weeks. I've talked about it probably with the last few games, really. And then, actually, let's focus on that first. So, high scoring, I've kind of retracted that and said it's mostly going to be a running football game, very possibly. The Giants have to have some real good discipline on the back end. Not having McKinney on that one play that went for like 44 yards on, with Dameon Pierce running the football, that was big. Justin Ellis, he's not a very good run-stopping defensive tackle. All he does is eat double teams. So the Giants really have to monitor how much they rest Dexter Lawrence for health reasons and also for play reasons, because when Dexter Lawrence is out there, he is a fucking force to be reckoned with. So that's in terms of the Giants, run defense. In terms of their run defense, I mean, their defensive interior isn't very good. Aleem McNeil, who Jeremy touches on in the interview, he's not really much of a pass rusher. He's more of a run-stopping defensive interior. Let me look at some of the other guys they have on the roster as well. Obviously, you got Hutchinson. But Michael Brockers, he's been surprisingly inactive in some of these games, so I'm shocked. Isaiah Buggs, he's been playing solid for them. Don't know much about Benito Jones, but not many notable names to stop the run, so the Giants could look to do that once again, which would prompt probably a low-scoring game. But the reason why I say passing emphasis is, they're very bad against the pass. That's one. Their secondary isn't very good. They don't really have too much of a pass rush other than Aiden Hutchinson and occasionally Julian Okwara, the third-year man out of Notre Dame. But also as well, they could come out and surprise, meaning the Lions, and pass the football and have success against our defense. whatever the way they do it, screens, vertical passing game. If our corners get beat now, they don't have too many, great weapons on offense. Despite having Amon St. Brown, I mean he's a very good wide receiver. I think we could all agree with that. But Khalif Raymond, he's got the speed factor. He's probably going to match up in the slot against Darnay Holmes, which I would worry about because Khalif Raymond has a ton of speed. We should know that from his Giants days. DJ Chark could be activated, so he'll probably be a test for Fabian Moreau. But the reason why I say stick to more of a passing emphasis is because if they're going to be passing the football, I think you have to as well. And if they're doing it and it works, you have to do it as well because, running the football, it was great for the Bears game. It was great for the Texans game when those offenses weren't really scoring a lot of points. But this is a very good offense running the football and passing the football. Jared Goff is playing some really good football this year. 15 touchdowns, 7 interceptions before we go to players to watch. But you want to keep on pace. And the Giants offense, let's be fair, hasn't been good this year. In areas they're taking strides, but overall, you look at the product, it's not very good. So you kind of want to be efficient. You want to stick to what works, but at the same time, running the football takes a lot of clock. It's kind of like the bend but don't break defense, if you will. Moving to players to watch, Jared Goff. He's having a really good season. Efficient. 93.7 passer rating. 15 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, about 253 yards per game in terms of the pass. 2,277 yards. A completion percentage around 64, 63.8 to be exact. You take a look at the rushing game. And I don't want to give too many things away, even though I end up doing it. With the Jeremy Reisman interview. But DeAndre Swift has been battling injuries over the course of his career. And he said, look, for Jamal Williams to get more of snaps in terms of the rushing game, in terms of running the football. Now, he has 9 touchdowns on the season. He's got 2 fumbles. He lost 1. But he's got 604 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, which is about, the moderate area. It's, it's not necessarily bad. But he's not as dynamic. I think he's more of a straightforward runner. DeAndre Swift is more of the, the East-West type. He can break some tackles. He's just overall better. He could be used in the receiving game. He's probably their 4th leading receiver. With Josh Reynolds maybe not playing, you could factor him in as well. I mean, if I was Ben Johnson, I think he's the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, I would factor DeAndre Swift against some of these safeties, against some of these linebackers. Like, if you could get him against Tate Crowder or Dane Belton, you're going to have some success. And I'm not going to be, homer about it. I'm telling the truth. But DeAndre Swift, he's got 40 rushes, 253 yards, only 2 touchdowns this year, 6.3 yards per carry. And then, if they do intend on putting Craig Reynolds in the game, 102 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, no touchdowns this year yet. Amon St. Brown, he's one guy to look forward to seeing, obviously, whether it's Adoree covering him up or it's Amon St. Brown tearing up this defense. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But you look at the yards after catch, I mean, that's about half of the yards he has this year. Yards after catch, 276. Receiving yards, 518. So that tells you he's not just a dynamic receiver, but he knows how to break a few tackles and get into the end zone. Now, he only has 3 touchdowns, but hey, listen, you'll take anything if it means more offensive production, getting your offense down the field. Even it also means, punching it in with Jamal Williams. So, Amon St. Brown, you got to look for him. You got to cover him well, maybe double cover him. But obviously, you don't want to open too many lanes for other receivers like Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds if he plays, DJ Chark, all those other guys. So, I'm only going 1 player on defense. I'll go 2 just to be fair to the Lions fans that are watching and all this other stuff. Aiden Hutchinson is one who stands out to me. 10 quarterback hits, 4 tackles for a loss, an interception, 5.5 sacks, 15 pressures. He leads the rookie class in sacks. That's really no surprise. But yeah, I mean, he's having a solid season. he's not necessarily, I would consider him like a Bosa pass rusher type. That's, what comes to mind when I think of Aiden Hutchinson. Not necessarily the Khalil Mack type or, the Aaron Donald type from the inside, but Hutchinson plays in a lot of different places. I will say that. He'll probably match up, if Aaron Glenn is smart, of course. He'll probably match up against Tyree Phillips. So I would, if I was Mike Kafka and Brian Dable, I'd probably do some chips. Have Myrick as a fullback, chip him. Have Saquon in the backfield, chip him. That way Daniel Jones has a little bit more time to throw, because Tyree Phillips, yeah, he's played decent, but Aiden Hutchinson is a real threat. Obviously, Jerry Hughes got to the quarterback once last week, but that's a whole different story. We're talking about this game right now. And I said I was going to be polite. I said I was going to add a player in. That player is Jeff Okudah. Now, obviously, last week I think he had the pick 6, so congrats on him. But with that being said, he's still coming together as a player. I mean, he's only played 19 games in the NFL. He's dealt with a severe amount of injuries. 68.9 completion percentage, which isn't very good. 439 yards, 1 touchdown, 98.3 passer rating. So we'll see, if he's going to be the guy that's covering Darius Slayton. Is it going to be Jerry Jacobs? Is it going to be Mike Hughes? Monty Oruwariye probably not going to play because he's been terrible over the last few weeks. But Okudah, I would like to look at, obviously. He's got 5 pass deflections on the year. He's got, the pick 6. He's got 50 tackles, had 15 tackles total. He's also a force in the running game as well. So just wanted to put that out there. And he's got 2 tackles for a loss. So if they want to stack the box, they could stack the box with Okudah as well. But also, Darius Slayton is a force to be reckoned with, at least over the last few weeks. So those are the players to watch in terms of the Detroit Lions. Now, questions to answer. I might add some in as well. Will the offense be balanced against a porous run defense and a porous pass defense? I still have the hunch that they're going to go a lot of run, but you have to pass the football if Jones is in a situation where he's actually being efficient, kind of like last week. And I feel that the Giants didn't score 30 on the Texans, which I believe they should have. Now, obviously, we don't have the personnel or the expectations to go blowing teams out, but we are 7-2, and we need to make progressions and stands in this offense. Running the football, it doesn't really equate to 25-plus points too much. But like last week, once again, Daniel Jones was efficient. They elected to not pass the football too many times. Had the best passer rating recorded on the season. Once again, only passed it 17 times, so you have to factor that in. But this is a secondary you can take advantage of. If you dial some plays up, and I understand that, outside of Darius Slayton, there's not too much wide receiver talent to work with. Kenny Golladay obviously has been downright disappointing. Listen, I root for the guy, but I don't necessarily blame fans for booing. He came here, $72 million. The fans pay the salaries at the end of the day. They give the money to this organization. I'm not trying to act like this is a Cashman Boone thing, but at the end of the day, man, he's not even been solid. So if he can get some receptions against his former team, great. Will they play him? I don't know, because they seem to like this Isaiah Hodgins guy a little bit more. But just centering around the question once again, I feel they need to pass a little bit more. I think they're going to stick to the run. It all depends on what they see in the first drive of the game and then work off of that. But if they're going to run the football a lot, I'm going to put it in your guys' heads. Do not expect high scoring. Do not expect high scoring, at least for the Giants side. But in my opinion, if Detroit comes out and is a heavy pass defense, you need to keep up with them by passing the football efficiently yourself. Can the Giants score 25 plus? Once again, it all goes towards offensive emphasis. If they're going to pass the football, that's definitely in play. If they do a combination, definitely in play. Running the football, no, I don't think you're scoring 25 plus when it comes to running the football. And this is also another one. Saquon got 35 carries last week. Do Gary Brightwell and Matt Breida get some more carries if Mike Kafka emphasizes the run? Saquon is a workhorse. He is the cowbell back. But at the same time, got to get some of those other running backs involved. Saquon will need rest. Brightwell, he's done well this year as a kick returner. He's done well when he's asked in the passing game and the running game more likely. Matt Breida's done well too in the receiving game. He's also done well in the running game as well, just getting those extra yards. So I do believe they do get more carries if Kafka emphasizes the running game. If passing offense is the plan, Daniel Jones, does he play efficient enough to get 25 to 30 points? I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes. Obviously he has to play on the level he did last week, and he's been pretty consistent at the level he's playing at over the last few weeks and really this whole season. Outside of 3 games, I would probably maybe even put that down to 2, because you have the Seattle game where he really wasn't good. You have the Panthers game where he really wasn't good, but the other games I thought he was fine, some better than others. But I think if they do stick to the passing game, I think you could get 25 to 30 points. And I think this is, once again, the week that you have to get 25 to 30 points. You're facing the Cowboys, very tough defense. You're facing the Commanders. They're playing well as of late. You're facing the Eagles after that. These are tough defenses, tough passing defenses. Now, obviously, I haven't done my research on the Commanders, but very tough secondary for Cowboys and the Eagles. I'm a little scared. So take the points, and you can have them right now. Pass the football. Can the rush get to Goff? Now, he does have 4 interceptions when he's blitzed, but at the same time, he's only been sacked 15 times this season. That's 4th least. Obviously, Jeremy will touch on it in the interview, but Frank Ragnow is playing with a foot injury, toe injury, and if that's noticeable during the game, and I bet you Dexter Lawrence and the D-line guys have watched the film and will identify, okay, he's got a foot injury. It's clearly hampering him. They probably pointed that out already. But with that being said, they need to take advantage of that. Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Goff isn't great against the blitz. I mean, we've seen a couple of quarterbacks statistically good against the blitz. But this Giants defense overall has done well against the quarterbacks they played against. But get to Goff. If you can't, confuse him on defense. He's vulnerable to interceptions. I know he's only got 7, but hey. Can Adoree Jackson double coverage hold down Amon-Ra St. Brown? It's possible. It's possible. And also you could add on to that as well, who will be the lead target if Amon-Ra is covered. DeAndre Swift could definitely be. DJ Chark could definitely be, and maybe even Khalif Raymond, because I'm still not 100% sold on Darnay Holmes as the slot guy. Maybe you factor in Nick McLeod a little bit. And Rodarius Williams. He got activated, so I would love to see him on the field against these Detroit Lions. He's a man coverage guy. He could play outside. He could play inside as well. I forgot about that. Congrats to Rodarius Williams on getting activated. So maybe you factor him in a little bit. You factor in Nick McLeod. Maybe they start seeing a little bit more time than Darnay Holmes. Can the Giants stop the ground game and stay disciplined? Misdirection is one of the more successful runs that Detroit does. But at the same time, when they're very predictable, they're very predictable. They're not very good on 3rd and shorts. And I would like to think the Giants have been at least solid or decent in that area. So stack the box wisely with a couple of different guys. Maybe you activate Collins. Maybe you don't activate Collins. And can the safeties and linebackers cover the tight ends and running backs? So the tight ends have not been in great usage in the passing game unless they were in the red zone. James Mitchell, I think, caught a touchdown a few weeks ago. The other 2 tight ends, Zylstra. There's another guy. I think his name is Brock something. Brock Wright. So I was thinking the right name. Hint, hint, no pun intended. But they're usually very good in the red zone. They're used as blocking tight ends. So that's not necessarily my concern unless you get to the red zone. And the Giants have been very good in that area, by the way. But the linebacker safety kind of thing worries me with DeAndre Swift being the threat he is in the passing game as a runner. So Dane Belton, kind of fix up your game a little bit. So keys to win. I'm going to go out on a biased homer limb and say number 1 is passing the football. Take advantage, outscore the other team, and outscore them 25 to 30 points. This is the time you have to do it. We face the Colts in a few weeks, and I'm going to that game, by the way. Just wanted to put it out there. But we face the Colts in a few weeks. And you could look down upon them right now. Oh, they're 5-1, and Jeff Saturday's a coach and all this other stuff. But they still have a very good passing defense. Detroit is the worst defense this team has played all year. Take advantage. Score 40 if you have to. And I'm not going to say that it really gets to 40, but I'll leave that for the predictions. Number 2, run with Barkley. Don't give him too many carries because you don't want to tire him out. But hey, let's get over 100 yards. Let's get to 1,000. Stick to what works. Be efficient, but also be balanced. Number 3, blitz and get to Goff. Goff is vulnerable to the blitz. 4 interceptions on the season. The Giants have the least amount of interceptions on the season. Dane Bell and Julian Love have the only 2, so both by safeties. Maybe Jason Pinnock gets a pick. Maybe Fabian Moreau gets a pick. But I do want the New York Giants to get a pick this game, nonetheless. If you're not getting sacks, get turnovers. Why not both? Anyway, before we move to the interview with Jeremy Reisman from Pride of Detroit, Giants, in this game, I have a victory. 24-20. I think the Giants still stick to that running approach, which I disagree with, but efficiency is efficiency. The Lions will try to put up a couple of touchdowns. Maybe they put up 3 touchdowns and just miss the extra point. Their kicker is Michael Badgley, so he's been hit or miss throughout his career. But with that being said, Giants, in my opinion, win this game by a score of 24-20. Let's move to the interview with Jeremy Reisman from Pride of Detroit, the SB Nation site covering the Detroit Lions. All right, so now we are here with Jeremy Reisman of Pride of Detroit, which is the SB Nation site covering the Detroit Lions. Jeremy, how are you feeling coming into this week?
Better. The Lions are coming off a 2-game winning streak, obviously, and things had gotten a little bit dark right before that. So I feel like the Lions not playing with house money like the Giants are, but things feel a little bit more settled in Detroit, and so it should be an exciting game on Sunday.
Definitely, I think it's going to go right down to the wire. But let's get right into it. Obviously, there's been a change in terms of offensive production this year. That's where we will start. What is the reason for Jared Goff playing so much better this year for outsiders that would like to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lions really tried to put him in as perfect of a scenario as they could because they know like he has limitations, right? He's not a mobile quarterback. He's not a guy that creates a lot outside of the pocket and when protection isn't good. So they put him behind a pretty good offensive line that features, 4 potential Pro Bowlers really, and three that are probably going to do it, and one that I think probably should at some point. And then they invested in wide receivers too. Obviously, we haven't seen Jameson Williams yet, but they signed DJ Chark, they signed Josh Reynolds, they re-signed him, I should say, and Amon-Ra is obviously a pretty talented guy, and then they tried to surround him with a good running game. That's been a focus. So they've really kind of tried to take the pressure off his shoulders, I think, whereas Sean McVay and the Rams, they were expecting him to carry the game. The Lions are trying to make it so that he doesn't have to do that. And so early in the season, especially when, everyone was healthy, all of his weapons were there, the offensive line was playing as well as they were, that started to work. And we saw it towards the end of last year. We saw it at the beginning of this year. And then kind of the injury bug happened, and we've seen a little bit of that taper off. But overall, I think it's definitely been better than I think some people outside, or some people in LA probably expected him to perform in Detroit.
Yeah, definitely. And moving a little bit to something that's supporting Jared Goff is the running game.
Yeah.
How is DeAndre Swift doing in his second season? I know he missed a few games, and I know Jamal Williams leads the rushing category, at least for the Lions, in touchdowns. Talk a little bit about the running game so the Giants fans and, outsiders know what to expect. And also just an add-on, is misdirection probably their favorite type of run?
Sometimes it's a good question, because I think sometimes they think they're a little bit more efficient at running the ball when everyone knows they're going to run the ball. They're very bad at 3rd and short situations this year. I think they ranked 30 or 31st in power situations according to Football Outsiders. And so when everyone in the stadium knows they're going to run, they're just not that good at it, and they haven't really found out a way to get around that. They don't really have a third and short identity. But in general, they definitely like to mix in some of the misdirection stuff. You'll see Amon-Ra on the backfield a lot. You'll see him running in motion for jet sweeps and things like that. And they really like to pull their offensive linemen. They really have invested in athletic guys, so that they'll pull Penei Sewell. They love moving around. Sometimes they'll put in a six offensive lineman and use him kind of as a tight end. I know the Giants do a bunch of stuff like that with extra offensive linemen. So you'll see the Lions do a little bit of that too. In terms of the backs, yeah, DeAndre Swift started off the season phenomenally. The first two games really, he was electric. He was what everyone expected when the Lions drafted him a couple of years ago. But then the injuries happened, and that's kind of been the story of his career so far in Detroit. Is that the injuries have really limited him, and it doesn't only limit him physically. It seems like it affects him mentally, and so he's got a shoulder injury, he's got an ankle injury, and it seems like he's kind of avoiding contact a little bit more than he was early in the season, and that means bouncing it outside when he doesn't necessarily need to, running east-west instead of north-south. And so he's been a lot less effective since he's been back in the lineup, and they've really been limiting his snaps because I think they see that. So you'll probably see a lot more Jamal Williams. We'll see. I mean, DeAndre Swift has essentially been off the injury report for a couple weeks now. So theoretically he's full health, but just it doesn't look like that. And the Lions tend to really take it slow with guys coming off injuries. So I wouldn't expect a full load from him this week. I would expect Jamal to kind of be that guy. And when you do see Swift, he might make a bigger impact as a receiver. I mean, he has scored touchdowns, I think, in 3 straight weeks, but a couple of those through the air. So I would expect him to be a bigger threat in the receiving game than rushing it.
Yeah, moving on to the receiving game a little bit. You mentioned him earlier as a guy who is supporting. Was really a nice target for Jared Goff. Monra St. Brown, obviously last year, no one really picked up on him. But this year, I mean, he's one of the better receivers, one of the more underrated receivers in the league, probably because the Lions, record-wise, they're not at the top of the NFL.
Yeah.
How awesome has he been for the Detroit offense?
He's been amazing. I mean, last week against the Bears, he was basically the entire offense. The running game wasn't working. The Bears really loaded the box, 8-man boxes a lot in that game. And so they forced Jared Goff and Amon-Ra to beat him. And Amon-Ra caught 10 passes for 100 and change. And that's what he can do. When he's kind of the only weapon there, and, they trade away TJ Hawkinson, which is kind of an interesting move because he was maybe a guy that could take some attention away from Amon-Ra. But that hasn't really seemed to matter too much. He did deal with an ankle injury early in the season, but it seems like he's back at full health. And like I said, they'll use him all over the place. They'll use him in the slot. They'll use him outside. They'll use him lined up as a tight end. They'll use him as a lead blocker. They'll use him as a tailback. And so they realize how much of a weapon he is and how important it is just to get the ball in his hands because he's a gritty guy. He's a hard worker and he's becoming a more and more proficient route runner as well. So just kind of a multifaceted weapon that the Lions can trust in key situations.
As you mentioned a few seconds ago, obviously the Lions traded away TJ Hawkinson to the Vikings, which I thought, the move may have been strange, but I thought trading him away to a rival was strange as well. But also maybe they saw that as the best package in terms of return. How have the tight ends done in his presence? Are they more used for blocking? Do some of them catch the football? Obviously, you mentioned that TJ Hawkinson staying would have been a nice piece to take away attention from Amon-Ra St. Brown, but as you said, it really hasn't mattered.
Yeah. I would say they're mostly used for blocking. Like I said, I think the Lions are really trying to establish themselves as a running team to take some of the pressure off of Jared Goff. That being said, it's a really young group. James Mitchell is kind of the up and comer of the group. He was their 5th round pick this year. Came off an ACL injury from last year, so they've been taking him along slowly. He's really only beginning about a dozen snaps a game. But the moments when they do use them is the red zone. I believe a tight end has caught a touchdown in 3 straight weeks for the Lions. One of each. So Brock Wright is the one who caught it last week. James Mitchell and Shane Zylstra, I think, maybe caught one the other week. So maybe I think it's then 3 in the past 2 weeks. They like utilize them in the red zone because I think they utilize them so much as a blocker that they tend to get lost in the shuffle in the red zone where everyone's expecting the Lions to run and they'll block for a second and just kind of leak out and be wide open. So that's, I think, the moment you really have to pay the most attention to them. Otherwise, they're not much of a receiving threat between the 20s.
Moving on to the unit that blocks for Jared Goff. Last year, coming into this year as well, the Lions were seen as one of the top units in terms of offensive line in the NFL. How have they performed so far? I think the stat out there, and obviously sacks go one way and pressures go another, but
Yeah.
I think Jared Goff has been sacked the fourth least this year. Talk about the starters a little bit, obviously ranging from Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell to some of the interior guys as well.
Yeah, I mean, first round picks galore there. You got Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, and as you said, Taylor Decker, all first round picks. That's your left tackle, your center, and your right tackle. Probably the three most important positions on the offensive line. Frank Ragnow, he's been dealing with a foot injury since week one, and it hampers him. You can tell when he's out there. In fact, he didn't practice the first 2 weeks or first 2 days of this week, but it sounds like he is going to play, which is obviously a big important matchup this week when you got a pretty important nose tackle on the other side of the football. But he's still playing at a pretty high level. If you like PFF scores, I think he's number 4 among centers. If you like ESPN's pass block win rate or run block win rate, he's top 10 in both of those amongst centers. So he's playing really well. He's also a really smart player, and obviously you need one to adjust protections and things like that. It's going to be a really critical role again this week because Wink Martindale likes to dial up a whole bunch of crazy blitzes, and so you're really going to lean on a guy who has as much experience like Frank Ragnow does to call those out. Like you mentioned, Penei Sewell, second-year player now, top 10 pick last year. Really phenomenal player. He's really hitting all of the marks where I think the Lions expected him to. Better in the run game than he is in pass protection, but he's made a lot of strides in year 2 in pass protection as well. And then you go to left guard Jonah Jackson, who was a Pro Bowler last year. He wasn't an alternate, but he did make it in there due to some people dropping out. So maybe not necessarily a top 5 player at his position, but not that far behind. Again, he's also probably a better run blocker than pass protector. And then the weak point is probably right guard. That's the place to attack. The starter Halapuli Vaitai suffered an injury in the preseason, never got to play a snap and had to have back surgery. So they've been shuffling guys there. I think they finally settled on Evan Brown. As far as I understand, a former Giant.
Yes.
But he was the backup center last year and this year, but moved over to right guard a couple weeks ago and it's settled in fairly nicely there. But that's still definitely the weak point of the offensive line.
Yeah, Evan Brown was an undrafted free agent. Like the first year, he wasn't active for at least most of the games. Then he got active the last part, and then they cut him the next season. Before we move a little bit into the defense, at least in my belief, he's still with the team. Talking about a player, former Giant, who started as a punt returner, could have made the a roster in 2018, but didn't. Khalif Raymond.
Yeah, he's been an important part because the wide receiving core has been so beat up. DJ Chark might return in this game. I kind of get the feeling that they're going to activate him on Saturday. He's been on IR for the past 4 weeks, but practice all this week. They started the clock on him, so it sounds like he'll play. But Josh Reynolds is a little bit less likely to play. Had a back injury a couple weeks ago, practiced on Thursday, but then didn't practice on Friday. That's usually not a good progression for him to play. So you'll probably see a little Khalif Raymond. He's really more of a slot receiver and kind of a punt returner there, but they've been playing a lot of him on the outside just out of necessity. And he's made a couple big plays in the past couple weeks. He had a 20-yard catch on the Lions game-winning drive last week. He's speedy. He's probably the speediest guy on the team. Except for when Jameson Williams comes back. But so he can be used as a deep threat. Obviously, he's not much of like a contested catch guy at 5'10" or whatever he's at, but he's a guy that'll at least keep defenses honest. And I think that's important for the Lions when teams are starting to load the box for him.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, obviously not, very grim, definitely from an outsider's view. Just starting out as, nothing too in specific. I'll start with really 2 questions. What's the weakest position group? And also, do you think the defense's problem is scheme, is it execution, or is it lack of talent?
I would say the weakest position group right now is probably interior defensive line. Aleem McNeil is a guy that they have very high hopes for, and he can do a lot, but they're still trying to figure out the best way to utilize him. He's mostly been playing 3 tech these days, so he's kind of built like a nose tackle, so he's got a little bit of twitch to him. He hasn't been as big of a pass rusher as I think they've hoped, but he's been decent in holding his ground as a run blocker. Next to him though is Isaiah Buggs, who's playing probably better than anyone expected him to, but he was expected to be a rotational guy at best, and maybe even a practice squatter. So that's kind of where they're at in defensive interior, and both those guys are playing about 80% of the snaps or so. So you're going to see mostly them, and it's just kind of been an interesting situation because they traded for Michael Brockers a year ago, gave him a big extension, and he's been a healthy and active for the past 3 or 4 weeks just because they want to get their young players out there. And that leads into the second part of your question, which is I think talent is the issue. I think the Lions are purposely playing all their young players to see who can be a foundation of this team going forward. So that means a lot of mistakes. That means a lot of players that haven't played at the NFL level and are still learning the scheme, still learning, the speed of the game. And so there's a lot of mental errors that you'll see really across the board, in the secondary especially. But I think the secondary is actually starting to play a little bit better, even though they're beat up and they're very young. So I think really that interior defensive line is the biggest weakness right now, and there's just youth everywhere. So that's the reason why basically any defensive stat you look at, this team is probably bottom 5-ish.
Obviously, when you look at the stat sheet, the Lions aren't very good statistically in terms of getting to the quarterback, but they have Aiden Hutchinson, who leads the team 5.5 sacks, leads all rookies in that statistical area as well. How has he progressed through his rookie year?
Yeah, it's kind of been ups and downs like you would expect for a rookie. I think a lot of people got excited in week 2 when he had 3 sacks in the first half against Washington. Some of that was a bit of a mirage. There were some cleanup sacks, but a guy with a motor like Aiden Hutchinson is going to get some cleanup sacks because he's never going to give up on a play. But some of that has been real too. And I think he's just been getting better and better. And he's really made some high impact plays in the past 2 weeks. He picked off Aaron Rodgers in the red zone 2 weeks ago. And then last week, they ran a tight end screen and he read it and forced Justin Fields to double clutch. And that turned into a pick 6 for his teammate. And so, I think he's starting to see the field better. I think the game is starting to slow down for him a little bit better. I don't think he'll ever be kind of the elite pass rusher with the elite pass rushing moves, but he's starting to develop a little bit of an arsenal because his favorite move is really the bull rush, the whole, speed to power type thing. He's starting to, we've seen the spin move here and there. I don't think he'll ever be kind of that, like I said, the elite pass rusher that I think maybe Kayvon has the ceiling to be, but I think he might just have a better overall skill set in that, like, he'll be able to defend the run a little bit better. He'll be able to drop into coverage every now and then. And so I know Kayvon does that too, but I think he's starting to get the game a little bit better. And now, even though he's already kind of had the stats, I feel like now they're starting to actually be a little bit more emblematic of the game that he's actually playing, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Moving to the linebacker situation a little bit. I mean, I look at the roster right now. There's a couple of guys I know off the bat. Alex Anzalone, former Saint. Malcolm Rodriguez coming out of Oklahoma State this year. Derek Barnes, who came out of Purdue last year. At least I think it was Purdue. Yep. And he could also play like D-line a little bit over there. How's that situation been? Obviously, you said that one of the weaknesses is the defensive interior. How the linebackers played.
Yeah, I mean, they're punching above their weight class because, Malcolm Rodriguez is a 6th round pick. And if you watched Hard Knocks, you pretty interesting story there where he just almost immediately was like the best guy on the field. And so really good instincts, very solid tackler, coming off an elbow injury. I think he'll play this week. They might have him kind of in a more limited role because second-year player Derek Barnes played really well in his absence while he was gone. They're really an aggressive downhill running type of linebacking crew. I think they're vulnerable in pass coverage. So if the Giants use a lot of play action in this game, which I know they like to do, that's probably a good place to attack. But they're really aggressive in the run game, and that tends, I know it doesn't show up on the stat sheet necessarily, but it is something that they take a lot of pride in. And I think with all the issues that the run defense has, linebacker is surprisingly low on that list. So I think they're actually playing quite well.
Moving into the secondary, obviously Jeff Okudah has dealt with a lot of injuries over the course of his career. You guys got Mike Hughes, who was a former Vikings corner. He was also with the Chiefs for a little while. A couple other corners there, Amani Oruwariye, who statistically hasn't been great for you guys as well. What's the corner situation looking like right now?
Yeah, Jeff is playing really well. Definitely starting to catch on there. You always kind of have to remind yourself that this is like he's if you just go by games played, he's just getting out of his rookie season essentially because he missed about half of his rookie season. He only played a single half in his sophomore season. And now this is year 3. So yeah, he's definitely starting to catch on. He's also a tremendous tackler. They've really kind of changed the run defense since out of the bye. He had 15 tackles against the Cowboys, which is kind of a crazy stat. And usually, you don't want your corners to have that sort of number because it sounds like they're giving up a lot of catches. But it was actually utilizing him in the run game that has made him such a big weapon. And he really hasn't been beaten regularly in coverage either. So that's looking more promising. Everything else is a little bit more in flux there. Like you mentioned, Amani Oruwariye was a guy that came into the season as the team's cornerback 1, and he's been benched on 2 different occasions, and he's essentially lost his job at this point. He'll probably just play special teams if he plays at all. They've essentially, if the team's fully healthy, he's essentially going to be an inactive. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the inactive list this week. And so they've replaced him with the aforementioned Mike Hughes, who's they haven't really decided if he's better as a nickel or an outside guy, but they've been playing him outside recently. Definitely think that's a weak point. They like to mix in Jerry Jacobs, who is a former undrafted rookie last year, who's just kind of come on the scene. Like he latched on to Jeff Okudah and just learned everything from him. And so he's a guy that's just like an incredible story, a really like everything you want in a football mind, and a really physical player too. So he'll get a little handsy at times and probably draw a flag or two, but really they like calling him a bulldog, and I think that's a perfect word for him because he's very scrappy out there. And then at nickel, they have a guy named Will Harris who has bounced around basically every single defensive back position they could find because I think he's survived 3 coaching staffs now, and everyone raves about him, but they can't find a place for him to play where he's good. And so now he's in the nickel, and he's playing a little bit better. But again, I would say that's not a strength of the team right now.
Out of sheer curiosity, because I liked him, the Giants were very, uh, you know, touch and go last year with corner. And when they signed Adoree Jackson, I was like, we got to get this guy, like, whether it's the late first round, the second round, whatever. How has Afitu Melifonu played? I know I think, playing him a little bit more at safety. How has he came on the scene?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a guy that's the injuries have really sidelined him. I think he injured himself in like the second game of the season last year and went on IR and missed about half the season. And they scattered him a little bit at corner late in the year, and he looked okay. But they decided in the offseason they wanted to move him to safety, and again he got injured, and so we've basically seen none of him in year 2 so far. He's just finally now getting healthy. He might be active in this game, but I don't expect him necessarily to play much. The Lions do have an injury with Deshaun Elliott. He's dealing with a concussion. I'm not sure if he's going to clear protocols, but I wouldn't expect Ifeatu Melifonwu to take his place. He might just kind of be relegated to special teams too. But the fact that they're changing his position in year 2, the fact that he's dealing with injuries has to not be a great sign for his future. And yeah, like it's an unfortunate situation because he was an intriguing prospect with a lot of physical tools that you would want, but they just haven't found a spot for him to play, and he just can't stay healthy. So he's still kind of very much a TBD guy, but if his career keeps trending in the way it's going, he could very well not be on the team next year.
Moving into game prep, and it's okay to pick the obvious one, of course. 2 X factors for the Lions on Sunday, one on offense and one on defense.
Yeah, I think I'll go with DJ Chark because again, I think the game plan against this Lions offense right now is to load the box, and teams have been pretty successful at it because Jamal Williams is a good running back, but he's not an explosive one. And so if you can limit him to 3-4 yard carries, then you'll slow this defense or this offense considerably. You'll get them into third and shorts, and like I said, this team is not good at third and short situations. If you have a guy like DJ Chark who can keep the defense honest, stretch the field a little bit, maybe get them into 2 high shells so that there is room to run the ball underneath. That can be a game changer. And it's interesting because Goff and Chark had a really good chemistry in the preseason, really good chemistry in training camp. And then, those first 2 or 3 games happened and we didn't see it really develop. And Granted, he only played 2 or 3 games. It's a small sample size, but you'd like to see a little bit more of that production, and maybe they come out firing this week. We'll see. On defense, I think I have to go with Hutchinson, especially Aiden, Evan Neal looks like he's doubtful for this game. Might be a weakness there on the right tackle. They like to move Aiden all the way around. So if they like that matchup, expect to see Aiden a lot on that side. If they don't like that matchup or they want to move him all around, maybe you'll see him on left side. I know that left tackle is pretty talented over there. So I have to imagine that they'll probably sprinkle him mostly over the right tackle there, but we'll see, because like I said, they like his versatility. They'll slide him inside on pass rushing downs if the Lions can get into some third and longs. But yeah, it's got to be Aiden Hutchinson just because he's been making a lot of big plays lately.
And then 2 X factors to look for in terms of the Giants, one on offense and one on defense.
Oh man, I mean, you have to go Dexter Lawrence, right? Like, that dude is a beast. I mean, that's all everyone was really talking about this week when it comes to the coaches, is just like, we have to figure out a game plan for him. And again, it's big that Frank Ragnow is going to be playing in this game. But at the same time, he's dealing with that toe injury. He's not going to be 100%, and not a lot of people have been able to stop him in any capacity. And so if he can stop the run, if he can rush the passer, Jared Goff is just not a good quarterback when it comes to pressure. And so I know they're going to dial up the blitzes. They're most highest rated blitzing team in football. So yeah, and I have to imagine blitzing right behind Dexter Lawrence is probably one of the easiest things you can do in the world, because that guy will clear out lanes for you. On offense, I mean, I guess I have to take the obvious one here too with Saquon Barkley. It feels like the offense starts and stops with him, and so Lions have been better stopping the run in the past 3 or 4 weeks. Obviously, last week against the Bears was a whole different beast, because they've got a whole thing going on with Justin Fields, and not to say that you guys don't have a mobile quarterback of your own, but don't quite use them at the same level the Bears are using Justin Fields right now. So you stop Saquon. I think it's absolutely critical that they do, because I think getting the Giants into third and longs is getting them into their most uncomfortable position, right? They have to pass the ball downfield. And you guys are still trying to figure out who's the best guy to throw down there. And I hear it's not Kenny Golladay.
Definitely not.
So yeah, if you stop Saquon Barkley, you get into some of those third and longs, then I think the Lions have a fighting shot at keeping this a low scoring game.
Who do you think is going to win, and where can people find you on social media and your work?
Yeah, I have this as an extremely close matchup. I really think both teams are going to try to do the kind of same thing, and they're kind of built similarly. They have really young defenses who they hope kind of punch above their weight class. The Giants have done a lot better jobs on third down and in the red zone than the Lions have. But offensively speaking, like it's kind of the same thing. It's, you have these quarterbacks that have had turnover issues in the past, so let's take the pressure off them. Let's run the ball a ton. Let's play ball control, where you're just trying to not make mistakes, bleed a lot of clock, 15 play drives, that sort of stuff. And so I do think it's going to be a low scoring game. And every matchup I look at is just super close. And I think the Lions are improving in run defense, which is why I'm going to give them the edge here, but I'm not very confident in it. And I fully admit this is partially me just playing the homer flag and maybe riding the wave of a 2-game winning streak, which feels like a long winning streak in Detroit, given how things have been. So I got this one, 23 Lions, 20 Giants. And you can find me, you can find me at Detroit Online on Twitter. prideofdetroit.com is where all my work is. If you're into video content like this, you can go to our Twitch page, twitch.tv/prideofdetroit, where we have a bunch of live things. We do Madden simulations, we do post-game shows, we do player interviews, all sorts of fun stuff over there.
Like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff, everybody. I'd like to thank Jeremy for taking time out of his night and coming on previewing with me. Great discussion, Jeremy, and we'll see what happens on Sunday.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Alex.